The price of eggs continue to soar as the bird flu cases wreak havoc on supplies in the U.S.
Yeah, in January, eggs cost about $6 a dozen, but today, a dozen eggs will cost you about $8.47.
The economy and to a troubling new forecast when it comes to the price of eggs, now predicted to rise more than 40% this year.
And egg prices are soaring in the United States and shelves are empty. A devastating bird flu outbreak continues to ravage poultry farms across the U.S.
In supermarkets across the Midwest, shoppers stopped in their tracks as the price of a simple carton of eggs climbed to nearly $5. But it wasn't the cost that left people shaking their heads. On the label beneath a bright logo read the words, "Product of Brazil packed in Turkey." Meanwhile, American eggs sat untouched in warehouses piling up by the millions. What was meant to protect local farmers has done the opposite, trapping them in losses they never saw coming. Across rural towns, barns are filling faster than they can empty, and the market that once promised steady income now feels like a ticking clock. To make matters worse, Canada, one of America's biggest egg buyers, suddenly pulled back on a major deal. Over 170 million dozen eggs gone overnight. Families that built their lives on farming are watching their future slip away, wondering how it all went wrong. So, what caused this collapse? And how far will the damage reach if nothing changes? The trouble didn't begin with any loud announcement or breaking headline. It crept in quietly, almost unnoticed as confusion spread through grocery aisles across the country. In cities from Dallas to Cleveland, shoppers stared at price tags that seemed completely out of place. Nearly $5 for a single dozen eggs, higher than most had ever seen. What once felt like one of the most stable products on the shelf had suddenly become a symbol of something much larger going wrong. For decades, American eggs had been a source of pride. They traveled smoothly across borders to trusted markets in Canada, Japan, and throughout Asia, feeding both families and the nation's sense of reliability and global trade. In 2024 alone, the United States exported close to 172 million dozen eggs, a clear sign of agricultural strength. But by mid-2025, that confidence began to collapse. A devastating avian flu outbreak forced farms to destroy over 38 million hens, cutting deep into production and driving costs to levels unseen in years. With fewer hens laying, shipments slowed, and international buyers began looking elsewhere. The final blow came not from disease,
to my great
but
fellow
from policy.
Americans, I am filled
The Trump
with
administration
grief and
introduced
anger
new
at
tariffs
the
meant to
heinous
boost local
assassination
agriculture,
of Charlie Kirk,
an effort that was supposed to shield American farmers from foreign competition. Instead, it pushed trade partners away. Canada, long one of America's most reliable customers, quietly canceled massive orders, choosing instead to buy from Brazil and the European Union. No public outrage followed, only silent withdrawals, quiet deals and shifting loyalties that redrew the map of the global egg market. By summer, the United States had built up a surplus of more than 60 million eggs, with nowhere for them to go. A system that once worked like clockwork was unraveling, and the trust that held it together was gone. In states like Iowa, Indiana, and Pennsylvania, the fallout has been devastating. Large poultry farms have been forced by TIGO, scaled down production, while small and mid-sized operations have shut their doors entirely. Storage units that were meant to hold eggs for short periods are packed to the ceiling, overflowing with unsold inventory. On paper, the United States still looks like a global agricultural leader, but behind those numbers sit warehouses full of eggs with no buyers and farmers unable to move their stock. The supply chain that once guaranteed steady income is now the very thing suffocating the people who built it. Iowa, the beating heart of America's egg industry, has taken some of the hardest hits. More than 12 million dozen eggs have been sitting in storage in under 3 months. The facilities built to preserve fresh produce for a few weeks are now straining under mountains of product that may never leave their shelves. Reports from the Department of Agriculture show that Indiana, Ohio, Missouri, and Minnesota are seeing surpluses 2 to 3 times higher than the year before. Every extra day in cold storage costs more money while farmers' income evaporates. Prices have dropped at the farm level, squeezing those who depend on fast turnover to stay in business. According to the National Egg Producers Association, in the second quarter of 2002 alone, 64 small and mid-sized farms disappeared from the market entirely. Nearly half were family-owned operations, some passed down through multiple generations. Barns that once rang with the noise of thousands of hens now stand silent and locked across local markets. The decline is visible. Fewer vendors remain, and those who still sell eggs are offering them for as little as 60 or 70 cents per dozen, barely enough to cover the cost of production. Yet at major grocery chains, prices remain stubbornly high. Shoppers continue paying between $4 and $5 for the same dozen eggs. This imbalance has nothing to do with greed or manipulation. It reflects a system jammed at nearly every level. Transport routes face delays, inspections pile up, export approval stall, and logistics networks are choking. Eggs can't move out of warehouses, but they also can't move efficiently to families who need them. The result is a strange kind of paralysis where abundance and shortage exist side by side. Farmers lose money on every unsold crate, and consumers lose patience with every expensive trip to the store. The damage is spreading far beyond the farms. Packing plants, logistics firms, and food processing companies that rely on egg products for restaurants and packaged goods are cutting shifts or halting production altogether. What once operated like a well-oiled machine has started to grind to a halt. The entire agricultural engine of the country, long seen as resilient, is now struggling to keep up with the very policies meant to strengthen it. In Nebraska, the state's agricultural board reported that 17% of farmers had postponed or abandoned expansion plans for the 2026 season, marking the steepest decline in over a decade. It's not that farmers have lost the drive to work. It's that they no longer believe their efforts will pay off. Markets have become unpredictable, and trade relationships that took years to build have vanished in months. Many who once saw farming as a secure way of life are now watching their livelihood slip away in silence. Prices remain high on retail shelves, adding to the frustration. Between April and June of 2025, the average price at major grocery stores like Walmart, Kroger, and Safeway hovered between $380 and $5 per dozen, depending on the region. It's the third highest level in 15 years, behind only the bird flu crisis of 2022 and the inflation spike of 2023. But it isn't simply the price that unsettles shoppers, it's the contradiction behind it. Consumers hear about farmers throwing away millions of eggs, see reports of Canada walking away from American exports, yet find foreign-labeled cartons lining store shelves. The contradiction feels impossible to ignore. A recent survey from Purdue University revealed that nearly 70% of residents across the Midwest had no clear understanding of why this was happening. More than half said it made no sense that American eggs were being destroyed, while families at home were paying inflated prices. This confusion has bred resentment not only toward trade policies but toward the entire system itself. Many feel abandoned by the institutions that were supposed to protect their interests. They pay taxes to support agricultural programs yet find themselves unable to afford one of the most basic items in their grocery basket. Online conversations show that anger is spilling over on social media groups and community forums, particularly among retirees and former industry workers. The same question keeps appearing. Why is the United States importing eggs while its own farmers are forced to destroy their stock? One Ohio resident described how their local supermarket was selling Brazilian eggs for nearly $5 a dozen while a farm, less than 10 miles away, had shut down from oversupply. The story has been repeated across dozens of states, documented by the nonprofit group Consumer Voices. These accounts tell a deeper story of economic frustration and fading faith in the nation's agricultural backbone. For many, this crisis feels deeply personal. It cuts to the heart of what people believed about self-reliance and national strength. America's ability to feed itself has always been part of its identity. Seeing that unravel while foreign imports fill supermarket shelves has left entire communities questioning what happened to that promise. Older farmers call it a turning point, saying the country has drifted away from the values that once defined it. They speak of trucks unloading imported eggs while domestic homes rot in storage, describing it as a loss that can't be measured in money alone. The emotional cost weighs heavily, especially on families that have worked the same land for generations. The bigger picture reveals an industry caught in a cycle it cannot escape. Policies meant to protect American agriculture have instead weakened it, leaving both farmers and consumers uncertain about the future. Trust between trading partners has frayed, and at home, the bond between production and consumption has been broken. Every part of the chain, from the barn to the checkout counter, is strained to its limit. The issue isn't simply about eggs. It's about what they now represent. A system built to sustain itself that no longer seems capable of doing so. American agriculture, once the foundation of economic security, now faces questions about its ability to adapt to a shifting global economy. Farmers wonder if foreign buyers will ever return. Consumers question whether prices will ever balance again, And policymakers are being forced to confront the reality that protectionist decisions can have consequences far beyond their intentions. And the impact is cutting deeper than anyone saw coming. Across the country, kitchen habits are changing. Meals that once started with a few cracked eggs are now being replaced with cheaper, less nutritious options. For families living paycheck to paycheck, eggs have quietly become a luxury. Feeding America reports that the number of households eating them only once a week has jumped by more than 10% in a single year. In states like Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Arizona, the divide keeps widening. Warehouses overflow with unsold cartons while dinner tables are left wanting. What used to be one of the most basic foods in America now reflects something much larger about the country's growing instability. For generations, the American food system was admired for its strength. It was seen as the model of reliability, a network that could feed its people, support its farmers, and adapt through any storm. But that sense of confidence is beginning to fade. The system still functions, but the trust that once held it together is slipping away. A food economist from Minnesota put it bluntly: eggs were never supposed to be a crisis commodity. When people start feeling like even the simplest foods are out of reach, they begin to question everything else. What began as a story about rising prices has now turned into a debate about power, policy, and trust. Eggs are no longer seen as an everyday grocery item. They become a symbol of how fragile the country's economic balance has become. A reminder that even the smallest disruptions can expose weaknesses running through the entire system. And beneath that symbol lies a question that's becoming impossible to ignore. Is the United States still in control of its own food supply? Recent reports from the Department of Agriculture paint a troubling picture. In the first half of 2025, American egg exports fell by nearly 40% compared to the year before. That number reflects more than declining sales. It shows a deep loss of confidence among international buyers. Canada, once one of the most dependable partners, has sharply reduced imports and shifted its contracts to Brazil and parts of the European Union. Other nations like Mexico, Japan, and Singapore are following the same path, diversifying their suppliers to reduce dependence on the U.S. This quiet crisis over eggs has become something much larger. It's exposing how vulnerable even the most basic parts of the economy have become when trust erodes. The issue is no longer about eggs or even about agriculture alone. It's about whether the nation can still manage its own resources, support its workers, and deliver stability to the people who depend on it. The warning signs are all there. Eggs have turned into a measure of imbalance, proof that no system, no matter how large, can stand when its foundation starts to crumble. Farmers are losing confidence in leadership, consumers are losing faith in value, and international partners are losing belief in reliability. A small, simple product has revealed the cracks in one of the world's most powerful agricultural systems.